Wow, this conversation did not go how I expected at all, yet it's one of the most insightful conversations I've had on the podcast in years. Aaron Keys shares how to prepare to be a 45-year-old worship leader so that you don't bomb out financially, emotionally, spiritually, vocationally. Like, if you're 25, you need to listen to this. If you're 35, you need to listen to this podcast. 45, 65, whatever age you are, you have to hear Aaron's insights, because he gets really raw, really vulnerable, really transparent, and we all need to hear this. So let's dive into this month's podcast. Welcome to the Worship Ministry Training Podcast, a monthly podcast for worship leaders who are serious about growing in their craft and calling. My name is Alex, fellow worship leader. Super stoked you're here. And if you're a new listener, I'm going to encourage you to hit that subscribe button, because every single month I'm going to give you helpful, practical guidance that you can immediately implement into your ministry. Hit that subscribe button and then go back through the past 9 years of episodes and binge listen your way to a healthier ministry. And if you're someone who is really serious about growing as a worship leader, I'm going to point you to the Worship Ministry Training Academy. What is the Academy? It's an online training platform that will give you everything you need to build a thriving worship ministry. You'll get 10 in-depth courses on topics like set building, team building, musical excellence, vocal technique, and more. You'll get live monthly training workshops on topics that are relevant to you. You'll get exclusive expert interviews with some of the best worship leaders in the world. You'll get done-for-you ministry admin systems and audition process, onboarding documents, team training materials, and even team discipleship materials. We will take care of you so you can focus on leading your team. If that sounds like something that would be of help to you, you can try the Worship Ministry Training Academy for just $1 by going to worshipministrytraining.com. Sign up today for your $1 trial, and I hope to see you inside of the Academy. All right, let's get into today's episode. Why don't you just share what you did, kind of hands-on, what that looked like?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, it's so fun to be back with you, man. I really appreciate what you do. It's needed in this space to have conversations of substance instead of just kind of celebrity and all the trends. I'm really grateful for this. So thank you. And I'm honored to be a part of this. So yeah, real quickly, for 25 years of my life, really from 19 to 44, I was a worship pastor. 20 of those years was at the same church in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, outside of Atlanta.
Wow.
Grace Fellowship. It was a great place. It's where, we got a heart for discipleship. My wife and I both. We opened up our home. We had people come live with us, for 6 months at a time, 9 months at a time, something like that. It was a total blast. I was also writing songs and recording and traveling, not really touring so much, but doing conferences and events while still leading at church. And we were raising our kids. We have 4 boys. 2 of them are almost done with college. 2 of them are still in high school. So I'm 45 years old now. And this is the first year of my life where I'm not on staff at a church as a worship pastor. And my heart hasn't changed. My role has. My calling hasn't changed. Just my role has. My job has. And so it's fun to still get involved in worship and even lead worship every now and then from a different vantage point, where for the last three years, since COVID, really, that sort of began shifting things. All of a sudden, I wasn't on the road as much as I used to be, right? All of a sudden, everything changed for everyone. Mm-hmm. But that was a kind of an inflection point for my wife and I both, where we ended up kind of starting on some new trajectories. So she's a therapist and a counselor. She does marriage, family. She's an incredible therapist at an office. She's got a new career. She was over prayer ministry at our church for years and years before that. I work in banking, which is funny. I work in mortgage. I got into mortgage at the worst possible time to do that, by the way. Although the last 3 days have been great. But I got into mortgage. And then I also shifted from really just kind of leading worship school, which was kind of a lot of worship leaders coming from all different levels, to now I'm focused more on coaching high capacity, the highest capacity of worship pastors individually, and kind of at executive coaching level for worship leaders, which I'm loving. So I've been getting trained as an executive coach, and I'm finding so much joy in bringing all the same heart that I've always had to help worship pastors go the distance and help them do a good job. I'm finding so much life in this new season where it's taken a little bit of a different turn, and I'm doing it in a different vehicle. It's one-on-one coaching, consulting kind of stuff instead of school, big classes. But I'm just loving, and I think one of the big things that's shifted since we originally started training up worship leaders, and I have been doing that for about 20 years. I mean, I was like, I was 25 years old, and I'd have some interns, I'd have some younger guys, some 19, 18-year-olds. What's shifted in the last 20 years is 20 years ago, the main need that I felt like we needed to address was all of these young leaders, worship leaders who've never been trained. There's still a point of need there, but there's another need because what there is now, I'm seeing a lot more of is the guys who've been doing it for 20, 25 years who are wondering what's next. They're not burned out, but they're bored out, and
Wow.
they're wondering, do I just persevere for the next 20 years? And if you're 45 thinking you're going to still be the cool worship leader at 65, you're delusional, right? So there's some people, it's an easy shift into whatever's next in their life. A lot of people, I mean, if you've done the same thing for 20 years, 25, you've been faithful, and now you're starting to wonder what's next. I'm having a lot of those conversations. And so that's where some of this executive coaching that I'm doing with worship pastors is really life-bringing to them and to me, because there are some interesting things that go on in the life cycle of a worship pastor, right? I mean, what no one ever talked to me about, and I don't know if you've ever had conversations about, and I'm not sorry, I'm just like running with all of this, but
Go for it. It's fine. It's fine.
I never thought when I was 25 or even 35 about the economic cycle of worship pastoring. Because the truth is, it's pretty rough. When I was 25, 20 years old, I just put everything on the altar, right? Like, I'm trusting God to take care of our future, trusting God to take care of our family, not worried about it financially, didn't have any mentors, anyone like really helping me think through, what's your plan for college for your kids? It's just like, oh, God's going to take care of it. God's going to provide. Maybe a song will work or something like that. Well, what's tough about that pure naivete, kingdom ambition with practical realities of economic cycles is, as a worship leader, once you get to in your 40s, mid 40s, chances are economically you've kind of topped out at what you're going to be able to earn, if you're on staff at a church, right at the same time that your expenses are about to go through the roof with kids hitting college. And I was not prepared for that. My naivety, I thought it was faithfulness. Now I think it was naivety. I think it was foolishness. I wish that I had just had someone helping me think through the long term, like what's the long play here for your kids, man, and for your future, because we just got into a position where I was like, with two kids in college and my wife doing grad school, we were not prepared for that. And I was blindsided by it. I wish that I mean, that's on me. That's not on anyone else, but I just wish that I'd had a coach or a mentor. Ever since my pastor died 6 or 7 years ago, I've missed that. The voice of a coach, of a spiritual father, just pushing and pulling and asking hard questions and fighting against, So now I've hired a coach to help me to fill that role. I need a coach. I think everyone needs a coach to level up. Like, everyone can level up. You just probably won't on your own. So anyway, long answer just to say the heart hasn't changed. I still want to see worship leaders who think their job is to lead songs become worship pastors who recognize their calling is to lead people. I want to help them level up. But with the limited time that I have left, I want to focus on a fewer people at a time, going deeper so that their impact can go broader.
Yeah. I know we weren't planning on talking about that, what you just shared in terms of like hitting that 45-year-old mark and then like financially and all of that. But let's camp there just for a moment longer before we talk about the other stuff. Because it's such a fascinating topic that, like you said, it's not being talked about. It's going to blindside a lot of people. I had last week or 2 weeks ago, we did an interview with Seth Putnam, and he said the same thing. He said, what topic might be really worthwhile talking about is that transitional point in a worship leader's career where they shouldn't be the one who's primarily singing the songs, leading on stage, but what do they do after that, and what does their life look like? So you're the second person who has brought this up in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So I think let's just camp there for a minute. Financially, I think somebody needs to hear what you just said. Like, we have to be having a game plan. So Mr. 25-year-old worship leader listening, or Mrs. worship leader listening, 25-year-old, start now planning for a second financial income to come into play around your 30s or mid 30s. This is such an unusual worship leading topic, but hey, let's just talk about that. So for me, worship ministry training has become that second stream where, I needed to do this. I live in Los Angeles. I still work full time at my church. I'm still heavily invested. I'm just as busy as all the other worship leaders who are serving full time at their churches, or bivocational, because those guys are just as busy. So I'm bivocational too. Worship ministry training is something I do after I get home from church.
Right.
That's my second play. Your second play is now you're coaching and you're also doing the mortgage stuff. But like, maybe give us some wisdom. You're saying we need someone giving wisdom. Like, go for it, Aaron. You got the floor.
Well, okay. There's a few things here. There's the financial side of what happens after you're 20 years into worship. Then there's also kind of psychological side, or maybe just like I don't know how to describe it yet, but basically we can talk about a few things, because I think that this is an area that really needs some conversation. I've actually thought about putting together some content and calling it "When the Music Fades," to throw back to old Redders, 20 years ago, when the music fades. And that's a question that we've been asking worship leaders for 20 years is, if you lost your ability to sing today, would you still be recognized as a leader tomorrow? That's still it's a great question, because a lot of young worship leaders do conflate their musical ability with spiritual authority. You should not do that. It's absolutely ridiculous. We're the first generation in the history of the church to do that, to think that because we're gifted musically, we should be given authority spiritually. That is insanity. And we're seeing what happens as a result, where you've got scandal after scandal, dropout, kicked out, leaders getting booted all the time. Well, we shouldn't be too surprised. We are the first generation to say, because you're a good singer, get up there and lead us in worship. That is hilarious. Biblically, there's no warrant for it. But the main question still remains, like, hey, what made you a leader in the first place? Because chances are, and this is the conversation I've had with about once a week, I'll get a call from a worship leader who is an old friend or went through worship school or something like that. And it's always the same conversation. They've been doing it faithfully for 20 something years, maybe 25, maybe 30. And they're just kind of going, this is getting harder and harder for me to hang in there for, not just economically. Let's talk about seasonally in life, because when the major trend of what's in for worship is lyrically not just Pentecostal, it's triumphal, it's triumphalistic. It's positivistic. I mean, think about it. If you look at the top 15 worship songs sung in the US at least, it's pretty triumphalistic. Like, the mountain's going to move. I'm going to get the miracle. You've never let me down. You've never let me down. Can you believe that? That is hilarious to me. We can get into that if you want. There's a lot of like, wow, life is always up and to the right, isn't it? That's easy to sing when you're 25. It's easy to believe the mountain's always going to move and the seas are always going to part when you're 28. It's hard to sing that honestly at 45. I've just prayed for too many people who didn't get healed, dude. I've been at too many gravesides of faithful people who fasted and prayed and the miracle did not come. Seth Putnam, I mean, he is such an incredible, faithful man who's gone through one of the hardest things of anyone I know, with his wife having a stroke, and he is the most loving and faithful husband. And we're very close, and my heart just breaks. I carry Seth in my heart as a hero of faithfulness, because that miracle, I don't think that miracle's coming, and his life trajectory just took a 90-degree turn because hard stuff happens. And it's really hard when you get older as a worship pastor to stay relevant when the trend of relevance is going this way towards positivism and triumphalism. I always get my miracle, and everyone that you know, their life is going this way. It's hard to stay honest. And you can qualify the heck out of every song, and you can spend 3 minutes before you sing it and go, here's what it says, but here's what I mean. But that gets tiring, when there's not many songs that dignify reality and dignify the desert that a lot of people are experiencing, especially in the last 3 years. When there's not many songs that do that, you have to kind of work twice as hard to make sure that what you're leading people into isn't fakeness and dishonesty. I think that, good Lord, I mean, if you look through the Psalms, every emotion available to the human experience is in the Psalms. We've taken a very narrow sliver of that in worship in today's trends. It's a very narrow sliver where you can't get too dark, right? But man, the breadth of what we have to bring to God to stay faithful is not really being addressed too well by popular worship. I'm sure that there are people out there doing a great job. I just don't know. I'm not in that world so much anymore. But I know that if I'm leading worship in a couple weeks in England for a conference, and because I don't do that every Sunday anymore, for the first time in my life, I'm like, what songs are out there? I don't know.
Right.
I need to know what people are singing. And as I'm listening, I'm just kind of reacquainting myself with what's familiar. I'm like, whoa, this is going to be tough. Like, this is going to be really tough. So there are some kind of seasonal realities that kick in 20 years into doing this, where you've changed. You've just been through a lot of life that you hadn't when you first started. And it was easy to just be kind of naive, So there's seasonal, there's financial, there's also kind of like, I think, professional. Like, if you drew a Venn diagram of 3 different circles of money, meaning, and expression, I think those are 3 things that you're going to have to kind of keep in tension to find fulfillment. Like, you need to make money, you got to provide for your family. You want to make a difference. So you want there to be meaning to what you do. And then expression is like, can you really be you? Can you do your thing? And I think it's only maybe in the last generation or so, especially in church generations, where we kind of expect all 3 of those circles to overlap, where I'm going to get my money where I get my meaning and I get to express myself. That is not a lot of people's experience. That is certainly not a lot of people through the history of humanity. As you get into your 40s, 50s, and 60s, you might not get your money where you get your meaning. That's okay. But in worship ministry, sometimes we can be given the luxury, and it is a luxury. Think about how many countries in the world could you actually provide for your family by leading worship? There's not many, Right. There's not many countries. So it's such a gift to be able to do that for a season. I'm just asking people to please, consider what happens after that season has changed, because it will change. And some people, it'll be easy for them professionally to shift from they're running the worship department and they're leading most of the music and they're writing. It'll be easy for them to shift into an executive pastor or a discipleship pastor or a teaching pastor. I don't know. The question that I ask a lot of worship leaders when we have these conversations is, what was it about leading worship that brought you energy? If it's like, I love just sitting with people and seeing their lives change over time, okay, well, you could be a great counselor one day, If it's, no, I love the carte blanche creativity that I get from having been here for so long, okay, well, that's probably not going to make you a great counselor. You might be good at marketing, The thing that I want people to think through is like, what is it underneath your job that gives you energy in that job? Because that's, whatever that is, what made you good at this will make you good at a lot of other things. I felt very intimidated. I felt very behind. I felt kind of insecure when I stepped down from what I had done for 25 years at the inflection point of the highest expenses we've ever had with 2 kids in college and my wife in grad school. So highest expenses, most unstable or insecure economic position. I felt really kind of disappointed, honestly. Like, good grief, man. 25 years, I gave everything. Dude. Like, we just put all of our money into scholarshiping students to come to worship school. We didn't save, we just went hard after God. And I don't regret any of that. I just can't afford to repeat it. We have to figure something else out. And so I'm wanting to help people recognize, there's a really interesting book by David Epstein called Range, where he compares Tiger Woods to Roger Federer. I don't know if you've heard of this book. It's kind of a social science book. He talks about the difference between Tiger and Federer, how with golf, you basically want to do the same thing over and over and over. Your swing is always the same swing, and the better you can be consistent at that, the better you are. And he talks about, like, that's a specialist, someone who does this one thing really well. So Tiger is like a constant example, and golf's a great example of a sport where you want that. He compares that to Roger Federer, who, Tiger started playing golf at like 2. There's videos of him on like Oprah or whatever. He's like 4, hitting the golf balls. It's cool. Federer didn't start playing tennis until 16. He played every other sport. He wasn't even interested in tennis. He was good at basketball and all these other sports. And once he started playing tennis, all of these other abilities kind of coalesce into exactly what you need for the game of tennis, because tennis isn't the same thing every time. You're adjusting every time, and you might have to, there's a lot more agility and stuff like that. So Epstein's basically saying, like, the generation that came before us, specialists ruled. The times that we're facing now, generalists are what you need to be. So it was really helpful for me because I was afraid that I'd been kind of typecast or stereotyped into this niche of, this is all I know how to do. That book helped me realize, actually, I've learned a ton of stuff about leadership, about organizational dynamics. I've learned a bunch of stuff about budgeting or creative writing with songwriting. I've learned about all kinds of different things that once I stepped back from this role, I realized, wait, I have all of these skill sets that actually make me good at a whole lot of different things. And what gave me energy about this, I could still do that over here. So like what I love to do, I love helping people understand and experience things that are going to enrich their lives. That's all that I've been doing, I think, since I was like 20 years old. Anytime I would lead worship, I just think if you understood what this verse said, and then you experience the reality of it, it would enrich your life. That's what, everywhere I go to lead worship, that's all I do. I'm not this great singer. I'm not this amazing book. But I want people to understand and experience things that will change their life. If you come to my house, if you're ever in Colorado, come on over and I'll make you a burger that will change your life.
All right, let's do it.
I will. I want you, and I want you to understand, like, if you get 50% sirloin and 50% brisket, and I grind it up and I mix it together, and there's nothing like it. So everything that I'm doing, what I'm doing is I'm wanting people to experience new things that are going to enrich their lives. That's the same thing with mortgage, same thing with coaching. It's all the same thing. And so I can do that as a worship leader. I get just as much life and joy from doing that as a bartender or as a mortgage lender or as an executive coach. It's the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, guys, unbelievable how much truth you've packed into the last 10 minutes of conversation. I wish I could remember everything you said so we could pull stuff out and unpack it. But the last thing that you said, I think, is really key for people to consider, which is, what is the underlying thing that brings you joy in your ministry? Why did you want to be a worship leader? It wasn't to sing songs. I mean, maybe that is your underlying joy. And then, okay, how do you do that in other venues or in other, seasons or situations? But for me, it's funny you said that, because just yesterday I had this epiphany. because my role has shifted pretty significantly at my church. I'm now the creative pastor. I oversee all of our graphics and all of our, creative video, marketing, everything, service flows, service specials, blah, 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 blah. I'm doing so much project management, and it's my podcast. I can be honest on air, right? So here we go. I don't find what I'm doing very fulfilling. It's like, I'm just, I'm project managing like 15 projects at a time, making sure they come to completion at the right time. And yesterday I had this thought. I was like, you know what I loved about my ministry? It wasn't really about the music or anything. It was about weekly gathering with a group of people to encourage them, connect with them, make them feel loved, seen, known, and build them up in the faith. That's what I miss. That's what I love. Now, I don't like projects. I like people. And that was a big epiphany for me yesterday. And that weekly gathering of people to encourage them and to check in on them, like you said, that's the underlying thing that brings me joy. And I can do that in so many other contexts, right?
Yeah.
And so, I love what you're sharing, and you're just blowing my mind. And everybody in the comments, all the Academy members watching live are like, yeah, they're loving what you're sharing.
Well, and I wonder if I would have had ears to hear it at 35. I don't know, man. Like, I might have been so faithy at 25. Dude, now I really think a lot of what I thought was faithfulness, I think it was foolishness. And when you go through Proverbs, it's constantly contrasting the righteous and the wicked, but it also puts in there the foolish. You do not have to be wicked to wreck your life. All you have to be is foolish. And I think for so much of my I think earnest is probably the word I would say. That's the number one value in worship music today. Earnestness. Like, oh, we love you so hard. Oh. Yeah. And then we get on stage and we like have to love God way harder than our lives actually love God. It's like,
and dance around around, of course.
Can we be a little bit real? So anyway, like in Proverbs, it's like you don't just need to be righteous and not wicked. You need to be wise and not foolish. And I think in church, we can really disguise foolishness as faithfulness. And we can also superimpose stuff like how long you stay in your job. In the church, we describe faithfulness as overstaying. Overstaying at a job is not faithfulness. Faithfulness is going where God's leading you, like doing what God says. But because we get a little fuzzy in our head, we think we're being faithful to stay in a place long past God has actually brought us into a new season. But I heard Bob Goff say a lot of people are like 2 or 3 jobs behind who they've become. Wow. There's something about that. And it's beautiful when you're able to take what you were able to do in the church and do that in a different place in the church. It's just as beautiful if your calling is actually going to take you outside of a church job into a marketplace. Because I can tell you from working in mortgage for the last 3 years and doing some executive coaching, I'm seeing a lot of good kingdom stuff happening out there too. And it just helps me when I do lead worship. I'm a lot more interested in the back row now than the front row. I'm a lot more interested in the people who have their arms folded and they don't really like this kind of music. I care about those people because my identity is not found anymore. And I don't even find that much gratification in how much the people are responding if I'm leading in worship. I find like meaning in their lives becoming more faithful to God. And that looks like a lot of practical things, becoming better fathers and mothers, becoming better neighbors on their street, becoming more generous with their time, becoming more forgiving or less resentful, like actual transformation stuff. That's the only thing I'm in this for. If we're just singing some songs, like, dude, I'd rather sing better songs. That's the other thing that happens once you get into your 40s. You realize this music isn't really expanding very much. Like, we have more songs than ever, but about fewer things. We just sing the same thing every few songs. We're just kind of saying the same thing. And I started to recognize I'm feeling a little bit stuck. I think you know that you're stuck if you have to drag yourself to work, week after week. You're stuck and you got to do something. My encouragement would just be to figure out what has God called you to do and then recognize how many different vehicles you could do that through to the glory of God, just the same as you would if you were on stage singing about the glory of God. I think we can give God just as much glory by living faithfully as we can by singing exuberantly, And so part of what that transition has looked like for me and what I've tried to train worship leaders in forever is just recognizing it's first half of life, second half of life stuff. It's moving from being the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. Like I find a lot more joy now in guiding these worship leaders who I get to walk with through coaching, through one-on-one coaching. I get to kind of just help guide a little bit and coach them. I am more excited about sitting down for coaching calls than I am about getting on stage in front of a couple thousand people. Like I sat down yesterday for 2 coaching calls with worship leaders. These are amazing worship leaders. And I am amped. I can hardly sleep the night before. I'm so stoked about what God's doing in their lives, not just about what he's doing in mine. And I'm thankful to get a little place to help maybe cut off some of the years of, you can learn some of this faster than I did, if you can learn from my mistakes and not have to make your own. I love that. But this stage of life, there's that verse in Psalm 16 where it's like the boundary lines have fallen in pleasant places. I grew up hating that verse. It's probably my least favorite verse in the Bible. But I grew up like as a rebellious kid in a fundamentalist church. Like I hate the boundary lines. But the older I get, the more I'm agreeing with Psalm 16. Like the boundary lines have fallen in pleasant places. My pastor used to say the difference between a river and a swamp is boundaries. One of them stays in its boundaries and brings life and beauty. One of them has no boundaries or just overflows its boundaries and brings stench and death. And I want to stay in my boundaries, but my wiring, I have these proclivities to want to push against boundaries usually. Some of those boundaries need to be pushed because they're stupid. Some of them don't, And so the challenge for worship leaders in their 40s is you need to recognize your runway. This season of life is in every day. The window is closing a little bit more on your time on the stage. That should not discourage you. That should thrill you, because if you've done your job right, there's going to be actually someone to come behind you, maybe hopefully a few people coming up underneath who are starting from where you ended with that level of revelation, with that level of favor and trust, with that level of organizational professionalism, where all the hard battles that you had to fight to get things to where they are, now they don't have to fight those battles. They can fight other battles, and you can actually, and so that's the whole like spiritual fathering, spiritual mothering. That's the whole, like, we want to raise up a generation who can do this, not starting even farther back than we did because we dropped the baton. That's the major story of most of the Bible, is one generation dropping the baton for the next one. They're not setting up the next one. They're not propelling the next one. They're making it more difficult. Look at all those kings in the Old Testament. Every now and then there's a good one, but for the most part, it's probably 90% of them are a disaster for the next generation. They actually make it worse. Hezekiah, he's one of the good ones. But holy cow, if you look at what happens in Isaiah with Hezekiah at the end of his life, like what happens at the end of Hezekiah's ministry? He gets sick. He's going to die. He cries out to God. God sends the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah's like, all right, God's going to heal you. You're going to get 15 more years. And Hezekiah's like, awesome. And in that time, he blows it. He totally blows it. And so Isaiah comes back to him and says, because of what you've done, yeah, you're going to live, but you're going to lose the next generation. They're going to be carried off. They're going to be exiled. All the treasures of the temple are going to be gone. And Hezekiah, his posture towards that sentence is, at least it's good for me.
Yeah.
At least it's good in my day.
Yeah.
It is one of the worst, I think it's one of the worst sentences in the whole Bible. He doesn't care about the next generation. He leverages them for himself. And it's the exact opposite of Jesus, who Jesus gives himself for the next generation, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've talked about for years and years is that your ministry, everyone's like, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. We're saying it's not a marathon, it's a relay. And it doesn't matter how fast you ran your part. If you drop the baton, you're out, you know? So at this point, I think for worship leaders who are getting older, you've got to start having vision to see, how do you hand this thing off? And how do you, when you do that, actually create energy and be a lead blocker? You know, like, how can you, that's what David did for Solomon. So David was a total disaster as well, but at least David wanted to build this temple to God. God's like, you can't, your hands are full of blood, so your son can. So David spends the rest of his life gathering all the materials, doing all the hard work. So actually, when Solomon's ready to build the temple, it says that they built it in complete silence. All the hard work had already been done. Everything had been cut and chopped and sawed. David did everything he could to prepare for Solomon. That's an interesting picture.
No, it's good. There's a few things I want to highlight. One, you said you're going to stop at some point. You're going to stop being sage on the stage to becoming guide on the side. I think that's really key for somebody listening to be like, you know what, maybe it's my time to start really elevating someone else and just being that whisper in their ear, that little Jiminy Cricket on their shoulder, telling them what to do. But I want to say one of our Academy students, Ginger, said, I pray that we do have older, mature worship leaders who have seen God through thick and thin, still leading worship. So I think it's sad that there's ageism on the platform, and there shouldn't be, but it is a reality. So I don't know if we want to comment on that. Maybe we will. But I also want to say there's one last topic I kind of want to hit on. And here's the funny thing. I haven't even asked you one question in our list today. And this is one of the most enriching conversations that we've had on the podcast in a long time. So thank you for going where the Lord has led you to go. I do want to touch on, I feel like at 45, I'm 38, you're 45. I'm 7 years behind you. Or whatever. I'm horrible at math. 6? Anyway.
That's right.
Whatever. Yeah, 7. Okay, good. You're in banking now, so you're good at math. So, okay. But I've got a whole other life cycle. 7 years is when all of the cells in your body get recycled. Right. And I will be a different person in 7 years than I am, actually physically different than I am right now. But anyway, in 7 years, like, one of the things I'm hearing from you, and I want to be careful how I word this. It's not that you're cynical or bitter, but that you are more realistic in your view of reality and of faith and the Bible. So you haven't given up on faith. In fact, I would say your faith is even deeper, more rooted, more rich, and less, like you said, jubilistic, enthusiastic, like shallow surface level. It's deeper. It's more patient. It's more steady, more slow. But talk to us about that faith part of your journey, and also riding that line between like not becoming cynical and bitter at the disappointments that come in, you know, as you journey through life, and now you're 45 or whatever. And it's like, wow, like my life didn't turn out how I wanted. People treated me like crap and this and that. It's like, how do you just talk about that faith side? And if you want to comment on Ginger's point about ageism on the stage, you can do that as well. But yeah. That'll be the last area that we talk about.
Yeah, gosh, man, now you're getting into the tender spots, you know? So I want to be careful here. Ageism, shoot. I mean, worship culture today idolizes youth. We follow Disney. So Disney wants to find 14-year-olds, pop sensations, because they know they can probably get a good 9 or 10 years of touring out of them before they're going to want to settle down. So when pop music goes younger and younger, trends in worship music kind of go younger and younger. And so instead of worship really prioritizing and championing substance, worship industry can promote and champion splash and flash and energy. And there's obviously needed space for a lot of that stuff. It's just, it can't come at the expense of honesty. So some of these lyrics, dude, I mean, I can't believe how bad some of these lyrics are. Like, I have a hard time keeping a straight face on stage. Like, I won't sing them, but I'm on stage and other people are singing them, and I'm just like biting my lip at how it's just element. It's like a 4-year-old wrote some of these lyrics, you know, and it's hard to stay excited about getting up at 5:30 on Sunday and lugging equipment around to then rehearse 2 hours of songs that half of them you feel like are vapid or vacuous, and the other half are musically banal. And you want to do that on your day off, you know, like week after week after week after week. Like, that's tough. So there's a physical or physiological aspect to this conversation we've been having too, where it's like, man, I mean, my church is still load in, load out in a high school, you know, New Life Downtown. Like, I did that 25 years ago, moving subwoofers at 6 a.m. I work Monday morning now. Like, I work Monday through Friday. Like, Sunday morning is precious. And every now and then I'm willing to get up there and do that. But it's not because I'm so gratified creatively driving home. Like, wow, I feel satisfied. Like, it feels like a sacrifice, not a satisfaction that does something in my soul. So there's a physiological thing. There's an energy thing there. The faith question, dude, the year that I've had, I think it's okay if you just get into winter every now and then and not pretend like it's summer. One of my mentors says, he's a South African guy, and he talks like Yoda sometimes, and he goes, first comes winter, then comes summer, and only a fool sunbathes on a glacier. And I'm like, what? He's like, you're in the winter. Just let it be winter. Don't beat yourself up that it's not summer. Don't try to do stuff that you do in the summer. Bundle up, slow down. Spring's coming, you know? And so I think that faith in those seasons, I think faith has to look like honesty, first of all. I don't think it should be denying reality. I think we have to admit we're a bit of a mess right now. I'm not saying we as in you and I, but I know for myself, dude, I'm a mess. You know, if not for lament, I don't have a prayer life right now. All I have is lament. That's all I have. I think from a biblical perspective, that's okay. From a cultural perspective, that's not okay. Like, something is off. Like, we need to somebody check on Aaron, you know? I think from a historical perspective, I'm right in line with most of the heroes of the faith. I'm not like I'm a hero of faith. Like, I'm not that weird anomaly going through winter or going through a season where I'm just not sure what I think about a lot of this. But I think that it's like the stuff that we don't bring to God that's going to kill us. It's the stuff that we hide from God. That's what's going to take us out. That's why I think you can see such brutal honesty in the Psalms. And that's why I think it's so hard to stay so fired up about leading worship week after week now for me at my stage of life, because I'm like, and also, no one wants a worship leader who's just going to bum everyone out. So, like, I don't want to get up there and be like, oh, everything's awful, you know? Psalm 13, how long are you going to forsake us, God? You know?
Yeah.
That'd be biblical, but it's not helpful, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe even beneficial. So I get that balancing that stuff and the pastoral side of how are we helping people, and how are we also not projecting our winter onto everyone else's spring? You know, like, I don't want to do that, but neither do I want to project my summer onto their bleak winter, right? So I think that right now, that's all that I can do faith-wise, is to hang on in complaint and in grief and in sadness. And I think that's okay. But I know that that's not popular, and that's definitely not going to get me invited to to open up for Phil Wickham or whatever, whatever is cool. Like that, I'm not there, dude. But I
Right.
think that where I am, I'm trying to believe that this is okay. I think there's a biblical case for it. My heart is just beat up a little bit. And our
Yeah.
Michael Card said, in Sacred Sorrow, he said, the head is miraculously fast and the heart is mysteriously slow. I feel that. I've like outrun my heart for a long time with my mind, and I'm trying to just slow down and let my heart be a little bit of a mess. And that means I'm
Yeah.
spending a lot of money on therapy and on counseling. And a lot of what used to be fasting and prayer is now it's therapy and
Hmm.
it's community, but it's helping. And
Yeah.
I just want to transform, man. I'm nervous. I'm a little nervous about how long I led believing we're being transformed from glory to glory. I'm nervous about that now. Like, man, I thought I would be more transformed by now.
Mm.
I'm I'm wondering if I'm as malformed as I am transformed, not because of worship, just because of the world and because of life and because of
Hmm.
whatever, my mistakes and foolishness, naivety. But I'm nervous. Like my confidence in what I used to proclaim is a little rattled. I
Yeah.
I still believe that God's good and I believe all the important stuff. I think my capacity to hitch up the American dream to that stuff is gone.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for being so vulnerable. And I'm in therapy too for the first time in my life.
Okay.
There's stuff that I'm trying to figure out in myself. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to invest in this because what's going on here? So I just want to thank you for your realness because let's be honest. I guarantee 80% of the people listening to this are aware of their own crap in their own life. And they're like, and they have the same feelings and the same thoughts that you do. And I love what you said. We got to bring our whole self to the Lord, and he already knows every thought anyway. So why are we trying to like say it's not okay to feel it or think it? He's like, duh, I see it wide open
Right.
right before me. I see all of it even more clearly than we do ourselves.
Yeah.
So thank you for being real. Thank you for being honest. I actually think that what you've shared is so refreshing. And I'm seeing so many comments from everybody. Jeremy Ellis, who actually went through your program, is on the
Oh,
call.
Jeremy. I love that guy.
Yeah.
He's my Idaho
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah. So, and he's saying so many good things about you. But I think what you said is like being honest on stage or whatever isn't going to get you to open up for Phil Wickham because it's not, it's whatever. You know what? I think that stuff that's happening, the big stuff, the cool stuff, the like flashy stuff is the equivalent of the Instagram highlight reel, which is only 1% of life. And the
Right.
rest of us are in the 99% of life is hard and
Yeah.
life sucks.
Yeah.
And and everybody's like trying to be this fake veneer of a person and they're dying because they're not. And actually, in reality, most people are living in the 99% of holy crap, what is going on? Life is hard. I don't get this. And so I think we should all just like tear off the mask and be real and just be like, let's fumble forward together. Let's like keep holding on by the tips of our fingernails to our faith and like just keep trusting that God is doing something in us. And I also feel like what you shared about winter is so important for someone to hear as well, including myself. And I've thought about this thing a lot. I'm like, winter is normal. Winter
Yeah.
is a normal season of the life cycle of the planet.
Right.
So like, why are we freaking out that like life sucks right now, or like I'm not growing right now, or it's like you cannot have spring without winter. So it's
Right.
like it's just a part of the process. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, man. I do. I think you're right. Like, I think a lot of people are struggling and life is hard. It doesn't have to be lonely. So if we can, in leadership, at least make people a little less alone. Like, that's one of the best things that people have done for me in the last couple of years. As it's been a lot of hard stuff, just fighting battles. It's been hard. At least I haven't been alone,
Yeah.
And that's my mentors will call and let me know, like, hey, I don't have answers for you, but I'm here. I'm with you,
Yeah.
So just that presence, that means something. And that's what I want to just afford leaders through the coaching and stuff that I do too, not just to sit and like help you feel like you're not alone, but actually to hold space for you to really process what's in your heart and where do you think God's leading you. And let's be honest about the gap between where you are and where you think God's leading you. And let's also be honest about the fact that your vision is way too small. I think about the land that God gave Israel. If you put it on a map and then you look at how much of it they actually occupied 10% of it. At the height of their empire under Solomon, 10%. I think that's probably paradigmatic for us. Like, I bet that what God actually has for us is about 10x the biggest thing we could ever dream. And so these days, I love sitting with leaders just one-on-one through coaching and helping them identify, what are you dreaming about? Let's 10x that. And let's make sure that your vision is compelling enough that it's going to be worth the sacrifice required to accomplish it.
Yeah. Okay, guys, you hear the depth and the biblicity of Aaron's
Is that a word?
knowledge.
I don't think that's a word, Alex.
It's a word, bro. Look it up. Ask Siri. So listen, guys, I want to encourage you, if you're looking for someone to guide you to, I mean, obviously some of you are in the academy, but this is like a whole other level of like executive coaching. If you are interested in that, I want to encourage you to connect with Aaron and all the podcast listeners after the fact. You know, there's thousands of people who will listen to this all over the world. Aaron would love to work with you, to coach you, to guide you, to be there for you. So, Aaron, where can they connect with you? Where can they find out about what you offer?
Yeah, for now, I'm just doing stuff through my website at aaronkeys.com. There's a coaching tab, and you can see it's just got like hey, here's about 30 or 40 of the things that we often end up getting into. But what I love about the coaching is because it's one-on-one, it's kind of like, Alex, tell me what's going on there. What's going on in LA? What's going on with your family? Where are you at? And so it's so much more. I just love it. It's such a different thing than what we did with worship school. With worship school, if you have 20 people in the room, you got to find common denominator. This is like no common denominator needed. Let's drill into your context. Let's talk about your vision, all this stuff. And so all of that's happening right now at aaronkeys.com. I might move it over to Mere Worship eventually. That's another platform. It's like $10 a month, and you get access to all the stuff. Chances are it'll be there, but for now, it's just all happening on my website. It's really life-bringing and life-giving. And for me, as a 45-year-old guy, I think getting to walk with other people and at least help them not be blindsided by 45, I think that's pretty rewarding,
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. Guys, so we're going to move into our Academy Q&A here in just a second. But Aaron, thank you so much. I'm going to put a link in the show notes or the YouTube description, and it's Aaron Keys with an Keyes, everybody. So make sure you add that second E in there. But thank you for your time. And
thanks, Al. Thanks for what you do. Bless you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope this episode encouraged you, helped you, and pushed you forward in your ministry. If it helped you, can you take a second and help us by sending it to just one person that you think needs to hear this? And if you're feeling extra nice, leave us a nice, shiny 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or like this video if you're watching it on YouTube. If you want to discuss this episode or ask questions, we do have a free section in our Academy where you can post comments and questions and chat with other worship leaders just like you, and also sample some of our courses. And you can go to worshipministrytraining.com/free to join us inside the free portion of the Academy. If you're looking for more, check out the Full Access Academy. You can get 15 days for just $1 to start and try things out. Again, you can try all of it for 15 days for just $1 by going to worshipministrytraining.com. Hope to see you inside the Academy, or else I'll see you next month for another helpful episode. Dang, I told you that was going to be some good stuff. So if this episode helped you, I'm going to ask you for a favor. Please send it to that one person that you know that this relates to really well. Maybe you know someone who is young and needs to hear this, or maybe you know someone who's in that 45-year-old season and needs to hear this, or maybe you're a senior pastor and you need to talk about this, or maybe you are a senior pastor listening to this and you need to send it to your worship leader. But just take a second, share it. That would help so much. And be sure to connect with Aaron in the show notes or the YouTube description. And also, I just want to say thank you for being a listener or a viewer. And thank you for helping spread the word about worship ministry training. If you'd like to join the Academy, you can check out the entire Academy where we do these live interviews, but we also have 10 in-depth courses for worship leaders that will help you get organized, lead better sets, lead more musically excellent sets, and run efficient rehearsals, all sorts of topics in there. So check that out. You can try it for just $1 for 15 days by going to worshipministrytraining.com. But thanks for being a listener, and I'll see you in the next episode. God bless.